Your grocery receipt isn't lying to you. Over the last 2 years, food prices have jumped by roughly 33%, and that sticker shock is only part of a much bigger problem. Behind the scenes, major supermarket chains are quietly bracing for what's coming next. In fact, as soon as January 2025, a dozen everyday foods you rely on could start disappearing from store shelves. My team dug into supply chain data from more than 2,000 grocery locations, and what we uncovered was honestly unsettling. That cup of coffee you're sipping right now? It may not be as easy to replace in the near future as you'd expect. Stick with me, because I'm about to walk you through exactly which foods are in danger, and what steps you should take before the situation gets worse. And trust me, item number 5 caught all of us completely off guard. To understand why this is happening, we have to start with the global supply chain, which has been absorbing blow after blow. And as if that weren't enough, nature has decided not to cooperate either. According to the latest climate reports, 2024 shattered global heat records. Some of the world's most important farming regions are now dealing with the worst drought seen in 4 decades. California alone, responsible for about 70% of the fruits and vegetables grown in the U.S., lost nearly 1/5 of its farmland this year due to extreme weather conditions. Now pile on the transportation crisis. Diesel fuel prices have surged by 45% since last winter, and that increase has real consequences. Trucking companies are slashing routes, downsizing fleets, and in some cases shutting down altogether. Still, don't hit the panic button yet. I've spent weeks speaking directly with people inside the industry, and there is a silver lining here. Some forward-thinking companies are already adjusting and finding ways to stay ahead of the chaos. In a moment, I'll explain exactly how you can do the same. But first, let's break down the 12 specific food items that are most at risk, starting with number 12, coffee. Let's start with the drink that powers your mornings. The reality behind your daily cup is far more alarming than most people realize. Brazil, which produces roughly 40% of the world's coffee supply, has just experienced its most severe drought in nearly 90 years. According to the Coffee Research Institute, Arabica coffee plants are failing at unprecedented rates. And the situation doesn't stop there. In December 2025, temperatures across Brazil's primary coffee-growing regions climbed to 95 degrees Fahrenheit and stayed there for 30 consecutive days. Once temperatures rise above 85 degrees, coffee plants essentially shut down and stop producing beans altogether. If that sounds troubling, consider this. Vietnam, the world's second-largest coffee producer, lost about 25% of its Robusta crop due to extreme and persistent rainfall. So what does all of this mean for you at the checkout counter? Coffee prices have already surged by around 60% since last summer, and more increases are on the way. Starbucks recently cautioned investors about serious supply constraints expected in 2026. Even those convenient coffee pods many people rely on are becoming harder to find, as major manufacturers struggle to keep up with demand. Smaller roasters are feeling the squeeze even more, with some paying nearly 3 times the usual price just to secure high-quality beans. I spoke with Mike, a local cafe owner, just last week, and his frustration was obvious. He told me that in his 15 years running the shop, he's never seen conditions like this before. If things don't improve soon, he may be forced to discontinue certain blends as early as January. Now, here's what you can do. If coffee is a non-negotiable part of your routine, it may be smart to plan ahead. Whole coffee beans can stay fresh for 6 to 9 months when stored correctly. And here's a lesser-known tip most people overlook. You can freeze coffee beans for up to 2 years without sacrificing flavor, as long as they're sealed in an airtight container. Just remember, there's no need to panic buy. Only purchase what you know you'll realistically use. We're all in this together. Number 11, rice. And believe me, this one deserves your full attention. In December 2025, India, responsible for nearly 40% of the world's rice exports, quietly tightened its export controls. They're now holding back their highest quality basmati reserves, and that single move sent ripples across global markets. What's driving this decision? Brutal heat waves scorched major rice-growing regions, cutting overall yields by roughly 23%. And it's not just India feeling the pressure. Vietnam and Thailand are facing their own production setbacks, compounding the problem. As a result, rice prices have climbed to their highest level in 15 years, jumping close to 45% since last summer alone. Rice may seem like a simple pantry staple, but the reality is far bigger than that. It's a primary food source for more than 3.5 billion people worldwide. That's what makes the current situation especially unsettling. In some regions, large grocery chains have already begun limiting purchases to just 2 bags per customer. A friend of mine who manages a supermarket told me their warehouse inventory is the lowest he's seen in over a decade. Here's a quick insider tip. If you come across Japanese or Korean short-grain rice, don't hesitate. These varieties are expected to disappear first because they're grown in highly specific regions with limited output, including Japan and South Korea. And those convenient microwavable rice packets so many people rely on? Analysts expect their prices to double by January. Now, for a bit of good news, there are alternatives that haven't been hit yet. Options like quinoa and bulgur are still readily available, for now. If rice plays a regular role in your meals, it might be wise to diversify early and stock up before the rest of the market catches on. Number 10. Olive oil. And this one may catch you completely off guard the next time you're in the aisle. Olive oil prices have already skyrocketed, up roughly 130% compared to last year. So what's driving such an extreme jump? The short answer: disaster in the Mediterranean. Spain and Italy, which together produce about 70% of the world's olive oil, are dealing with what experts are calling the worst drought in more than 1,200 years. And that's not hyperbole. Satellite imagery shows vast olive groves turning brown and lifeless. Spanish farmers alone lost more than half of their olive harvest last season. In some heartbreaking cases, growers have been forced to cut down olive trees that are centuries old simply because they no longer have enough water to keep them alive. If you remember paying around $8 for a bottle of extra virgin olive oil, those days are officially behind us. I checked prices earlier today, and that same bottle is now selling for $17.99. Analysts warn it could climb to $25 as soon as January. Here's where it gets even more concerning. Large retailers like Kroger and Walmart have already started limiting how many bottles each shopper can purchase. That's usually a sign shortages are being taken seriously behind the scenes. Now, let me pass along a valuable tip I picked up from a third-generation olive oil producer in Greece. If you come across a genuinely good deal right now, it's worth buying ahead. Authentic olive oil can stay fresh for up to 2 years when stored properly. Keep it in a cool, dark place, well away from heat sources like your stove. And here's an insider detail most people miss. When choosing a bottle, look for a harvest date, not just an expiration date. That single detail tells you far more about quality and freshness. And trust me, your future self will be glad you paid attention. Number 9. Tomatoes. Brace yourself because the situation around this everyday kitchen staple is more serious than most people realize. Tomatoes are currently caught in what can only be described as a perfect storm. Let's start with California, which produces about 95% of America's processing tomatoes. The state just went through its driest 3-year stretch ever recorded. As a result, farmers were forced to leave tens of thousands of acres completely unplanted because there simply wasn't enough water to go around. Unfortunately, the challenges don't stop there. The cost of growing tomatoes has exploded. Fertilizer prices alone have jumped nearly 50% compared to last year, squeezing farmers from every direction. Faced with higher expenses and limited water, many growers are choosing to abandon tomatoes altogether in favor of crops that are cheaper and less resource-intensive. And honestly, it's hard to blame them. Even tomatoes grown indoors aren't immune. Those greenhouse tomatoes you rely on during the winter months come with a hidden cost. Energy prices used to heat greenhouses have doubled in many regions, making winter production far more expensive than it used to be. Then there's Mexico, the largest supplier of tomatoes to the U.S. Severe drought conditions are hitting its main growing regions as well. Just last month, Mexico reported a 35% drop in tomato exports, tightening supply even further. So what does all of this mean for you at the store? Higher prices, much higher. Our analysis suggests tomato prices could surge by as much as 60% by January. Those $3 cans of tomato sauce you're used to grabbing may soon cost $5 or more. Fresh tomatoes, especially out of season, could start feeling more like a luxury than a staple. Here's a practical tip to stay ahead. If you come across a good deal on canned tomatoes right now, picking up a few extra cans isn't a bad move. Properly stored, they can last up to 2 years. Just remember, there's no need to clear the shelf. Take what you'll use and leave enough for others. Number 8. Eggs. And yes, this one surprises almost everyone. Those humble breakfast staples you've always relied on may soon start feeling like a premium item. Think back to the egg shortage of 2023 when prices climbed to around $7 a dozen. As painful as that felt, it may end up looking cheap compared to what's potentially coming in 2026. Let me explain why. Behind the scenes, the situation has deteriorated fast. The latest report from the USDA revealed a major shock. Large egg producers are dealing with a 23% drop in laying hens nationwide. The reason is a cascading chain of problems, starting with the most aggressive strain of avian flu ever documented. Entire farms are being wiped out in a matter of days. Just last week, Cedar Grove Farms, one of the Midwest's largest producers, was forced to cull 2.3 million birds. That single decision represents roughly 138 million eggs that simply won't exist this year. And unfortunately, that's only part of the story. Smaller family-run farms, the ones that once stocked local grocery stores, are disappearing at an alarming rate. More than 100 local egg producers have shut down in just the past 6 months. The main culprit? Feed costs. Since late 2024, feed prices have surged by about 40%. Imagine running a business where your biggest expense suddenly jumps that much overnight. It's like paying $7 for a coffee that used to cost $5, except you're doing it every single day for thousands of chickens. Here's something most shoppers don't realize. Major grocery chains are already preparing for shortages. Retailers like Walmart and Kroger have quietly begun limiting egg purchases in certain states, without making any public announcements. Those 3-for-1 egg deals you used to see? They've quietly vanished. Large producers are currently operating at just 60% capacity, and industry insiders warn that could drop to 45% by winter. That said, I'm not here just to sound the alarm. There are practical steps you can take. Experts agree that if you spot eggs priced under $5 a dozen, it may be wise to plan ahead. Here's a game-changing tip. Crack the eggs, beat them lightly, and freeze them in ice cube trays. 1 cube equals 1 egg, and they'll keep for up to 6 months in the freezer. I've been doing this myself, and it's incredibly helpful for baking and cooking. If you're worried about nutrition, there's good news. The American Egg Board confirms that eggs retain about 98% of their nutritional value when frozen correctly. Protein, vitamins, and minerals, all preserved. And this isn't just a US issue anymore. Canada has seen egg production fall by 18%, while Mexico is grappling with its own avian flu outbreak. In fact, the Food and Agriculture Organization has officially labeled the situation a global egg security concern. In plain terms, this means we can't rely on imports to solve the problem. I'm not suggesting eggs will disappear entirely, but the $3 dozens many of us took for granted may soon cost $9 or more by January. Organic eggs could push $12 a carton. At this point, it's not just about breakfast anymore. It's about adjusting to a rapidly changing food landscape and staying one step ahead. Number 7. Butter. Remember when butter was just always there? No stress, no second thoughts, just sitting on the shelf whenever you needed it. Those days are fading fast. Global dairy producers are quietly raising red flags about butter availability, and this is one warning worth paying attention to. The trouble starts on the farm. Dairy farmers across major production regions are under serious pressure after feed costs jumped by nearly 40% last year. That spike has already pushed many small family-run farms out of business, and that's only the beginning of the problem. Here's something most shoppers don't realize. The average dairy cow is now producing about 7% less milk than normal. Rising temperatures are causing heat stress, which directly impacts milk output. Less milk doesn't just mean less cheese or yogurt. It also means significantly less butter. It's basic math, but the consequences are anything but small. The situation overseas isn't helping either. New Zealand and Ireland, together responsible for close to 40% of global butter exports, are dealing with their worst droughts in decades. Farmers in both countries report that cows are producing less milk simply because the animals are overheated and under constant stress. So why is January 2026 such a critical point? Butter producers usually build up reserves during the summer months to prepare for peak demand later in the year. This time, that didn't happen. Storage facilities are now reporting the lowest butter stockpiles seen since 1995. Once the holiday baking season kicks in and demand surges, experts expect supply gaps to become impossible to ignore. Here's a practical move you can make now. If you come across butter at a decent price, consider picking up an extra pack or two. Butter freezes extremely well and can be stored for up to 6 months without any loss in quality. And when prices push past $7 per pound by the end of the year, as many analysts expect, you'll be glad you planned ahead. Number 6. Codfish. And this one hits especially hard if fish and chips are a regular favorite in your house. That familiar flaky white fish many of us grew up eating is in real trouble. Recent surveys from the North Atlantic Fishing Commission reveal that cod populations have plunged by an alarming 48% since 2019. That alone would be concerning, but the situation gets even more serious. After reviewing the latest fishing regulations, I found that cod quotas in several major fishing zones have been cut by nearly 2/3. As a result, many of the massive commercial fishing vessels you see in documentaries aren't even leaving port anymore. Harbors across Norway and Iceland are filled with idle boats, simply because there's not enough fish left to justify going out. And then there's the environmental side of the problem. A 2025 marine biology study found that rising ocean temperatures are forcing cod to migrate into deeper, colder waters. That shift has disrupted traditional fishing grounds that supplied grocery stores for decades. Areas that once delivered steady catches are now coming back nearly empty. So how does this affect you? The numbers tell the story. That cod fillet selling for $7.99 per pound last year is already reaching $15.99 in some markets. Analysts warn prices could climb as high as $22 per pound by January 2026. In response, several major supermarket chains have started limiting purchases to just 2 packages per customer. If cod is a regular part of your meals, the smartest move may be to plan ahead. Stocking your freezer now could help you avoid the worst of the price spikes. Marine scientists also suggest looking into alternatives like haddock or pollock, which are still relatively plentiful and have a similar taste and texture. Here's a lesser-known tip that could make a real difference. If you do buy cod, look for packages labeled line caught from Iceland. These sustainably managed fisheries are far more likely to maintain supply, even as shortages deepen elsewhere. Number 5. Honey. Pay close attention because what's happening with honey could permanently change the way you shop. That golden jar sitting quietly in your pantry is becoming far more valuable than most people realize, almost like liquid gold. And no, that's not an exaggeration. The reason comes down to something deeply alarming that unfolded last summer. Across the United States, beekeepers woke up to devastation. Nearly 48% of managed bee colonies were lost in a single season, marking the worst die-off ever recorded. To put that into perspective, imagine half of your neighborhood disappearing overnight. That's essentially what happened to our bees. And this isn't a localized issue. The losses stretched across the country, from California all the way to New York. But here's where the story becomes even more concerning. A recent study from Cornell University uncovered another major problem. Wild bee populations, the ones not maintained by beekeepers, have declined by 37% in critical farming regions. These are exactly the areas where pollination matters most. Even the plants bees depend on are struggling. Scientists discovered that flowering plants are now producing about 35% less nectar than they did in 2020. In other words, flowers are running low on fuel, leaving bees with less food to turn into the honey we rely on. So what does this mean for your kitchen? Real, unprocessed honey is rapidly becoming a luxury item. And I'm not talking about the heavily processed bottles mixed with syrups. I mean raw honey straight from the hive. Some major retailers, including Whole Foods, have already begun limiting honey purchases in certain areas. That alone tells you how serious the situation has become. Market analysts are projecting a sharp 40% price increase by January 2026. That $5 honey bottle you use to toss into your cart without thinking could soon cost $7 or $8, if you can find it at all. And many experts believe this isn't just a temporary spike. They're warning that honey prices may stay elevated long-term as supply struggles continue. Now for some practical advice. If you see raw, locally produced honey at a farmer's market or neighborhood shop, don't hesitate. Buy it while you can. Here's an incredible fact most people don't know. Properly stored honey never spoils. Scientists have found jars of honey over 3,000 years old in ancient Egyptian tombs, and it was still perfectly edible. Keep honey sealed in a cool, dark place, and it can last indefinitely. Another smart move is supporting local beekeepers whenever possible. They're the unsung heroes in this crisis, working tirelessly to protect their hives using sustainable, natural methods. As a bonus, local honey contains regional pollen, which some people believe can help ease seasonal allergies. Sweetness with potential benefits included. If you're wondering about substitutes, there are options like agave nectar, maple syrup, and date syrup. Still, nothing truly replaces real honey, especially for baking. Honey doesn't just add sweetness. It locks in moisture, improves browning, and creates that soft texture bakers love. At the end of the day, this isn't just about what you drizzle into tea or spread on toast. The honey shortage is really a bee crisis, and bees pollinate nearly 1/3 of the food we eat. So the next time you see a bee buzzing through your garden, remember, it's doing far more for your future meals than you might think. Number 4. Dark chocolate. And fair warning, this is not the kind of news chocolate lovers want to hear. Not long ago, grabbing a premium bar of dark chocolate for around $3 felt normal. Those days are slipping away fast. Global cocoa prices have just shattered records, soaring to roughly $88,500 per ton. That's an eye-watering 200% increase compared to last year alone. So what's driving this surge? The trouble starts in West Africa, which supplies about 70% of the world's cocoa. The region is currently enduring its most severe agricultural crisis in 4 decades. Extreme weather conditions have wiped out close to 1/3 of cocoa crops in countries like Ghana and Ivory Coast. And unfortunately, that's only part of the problem. A destructive plant disease known as swollen shoot virus is spreading rapidly through cocoa trees, weakening plantations and slashing yields even further. Farmers are struggling to contain it, and entire growing areas are being affected. This has major chocolate companies on edge. Industry giants such as Hershey and Lindt aren't just concerned, they're scrambling. Internal projections suggest dark chocolate production could be reduced by as much as 40% by January 2025. That rich 70% cacao bar you enjoy after dinner may soon be considered a luxury, with prices climbing toward $12 per bar. Here's something most shoppers haven't noticed yet. Artisan chocolate makers are already adjusting. Many are experimenting with cocoa substitutes like carob and date powder to cope with tightening supplies. If dark chocolate is a must-have for you, it may be wise to plan ahead. Picking up 3 or 4 high-quality bars now can buy you some breathing room. Stored properly in a cool, dark place, premium dark chocolate can stay fresh for up to 8 months. And one last thought. This might be the moment to slowly warm up to milk chocolate again. I'm just saying, flexibility could be your friend in the months ahead. Number 3. Sweet potatoes. And this one might genuinely surprise you. Those nutrient-rich favorites that show up at holiday dinners and comfort meals are facing some serious trouble. North Carolina, which produces about 60% of America's sweet potatoes, just experienced its worst growing season in 3 decades. Farmers I've spoken with say extreme weather wiped out nearly 40% of their harvest. The damage came in waves. During the summer of 2025, relentless heat stressed crops beyond recovery. Then, as if that weren't enough, early winter brought record-setting floods that finished off what was left. It was the kind of 1-2 punch no grower could prepare for. You might think the solution is simple, just source them elsewhere. Unfortunately, that's not an option right now. Other major sweet potato producing states, including Mississippi and Louisiana, are facing similar challenges. And this isn't limited to the US either. Even China, the world's largest sweet potato producer, has reported a 25% drop in yields due to global weather disruptions. So what does that mean for shoppers? Prices are already moving fast. Sweet potatoes that once sold for around $1.29 per pound are now ringing up at $2.50 or more in some stores. By January, experts warn prices could double again, assuming you can find them at all. Here's a smart move if you spot them at a reasonable price. Buy a little extra. When stored correctly in a cool, dark space at around 60 degrees Fahrenheit, sweet potatoes can last for up to 6 months. Trust me, when winter recipes start calling for them and shelves are bare, your future self will be grateful you planned ahead. Number 2. Garlic. And this one might really catch you off guard because it's something most of us use without a second thought. That humble bulb sitting on your kitchen counter is suddenly at the center of a growing supply problem. Nearly 80% of the world's garlic supply comes from China, and right now, that pipeline is under serious strain. Just last month, shipping costs out of Chinese ports surged by about 45%. But surprisingly, transportation isn't even the biggest issue. Trade restrictions are tightening fast. Countries like India and Brazil have recently imposed steep tariffs on garlic imports, and several other nations are considering similar moves. This domino effect is choking global supply at multiple points. Even closer to home, the situation isn't much better. California, which produces the majority of America's domestic garlic, has seen production fall by roughly 30% due to unpredictable and extreme weather patterns. Between international disruptions and domestic shortfalls, availability is shrinking from all sides. Let's put this into everyday terms. That $1 garlic bulb you grabbed without thinking last year is already selling for $2.50 in some stores. Analysts warn that by January, prices could triple, assuming garlic is even available. Pre-peeled garlic containers? Many of them are already quietly disappearing from shelves. So what are savvy shoppers doing? They're buying whole garlic bulbs now, especially if they find them priced under $3. When stored properly in a cool, dry place, whole garlic can last up to 6 months. Farmers markets are another smart option. Locally grown garlic from small farms may soon be the most reliable source. Here's a tip most people overlook. If you see garlic with the roots still attached, grab it. It stays fresh longer, and you can even plant it yourself if you're feeling ambitious. Just remember, there's no need to overdo it. The goal isn't hoarding. It's making sure you have what you'll realistically use. Number 1. Orange juice. And for breakfast lovers, this one really hits home. Orange juice is something many of us have poured without thinking for decades, but that sense of normalcy is disappearing fast. Here's what most people don't realize. Florida, which typically produces around 90% of America's oranges, just recorded its smallest harvest in 87 years. The numbers are staggering. In 2024, Florida produced only 15.8 million boxes of oranges, down from 41.2 million just 2 years ago. So what's behind this collapse? Surprisingly, it comes down to something tiny. An insect smaller than a grain of rice. That pest spreads citrus greening disease, also known as HLB, and it's devastating orange groves across the state. Once a tree is infected, it's essentially doomed. The fruit becomes bitter, undersized, and unusable for juice. Think of it like a tree running a fever it can never break. You might be wondering why we can't simply import more oranges. In theory, that sounds reasonable. In reality, it's not that simple. Brazil has tried to help fill the gap, but extreme weather there has damaged crops as well. On top of that, shipping costs have doubled since last year, making imported orange juice dramatically more expensive. Here's how this translates at the store. If you're currently seeing orange juice priced around $7 to $8 per gallon, experts warn it could hit $12 by January 2025. Some grocery stores have already started limiting how many bottles customers can buy. If orange juice is non-negotiable in your household, consider switching strategies. Frozen concentrate is a smart option. It stores well and can last up to a year in your freezer. You may also want to explore alternatives like tangerine juice or fortified plant-based drinks. One of them might surprise you and earn a permanent spot at your breakfast table. We've covered the 12 foods most at risk, from coffee and rice to olive oil and orange juice. And here's the key takeaway. Being prepared beats being scared every single time. You don't have to do everything at once. Start with just 1 or 2 items from this list this week. I spend hours researching this so you don't have to. If this helped you, hitting the like button takes 1 second and helps this information reach more people. Now, I want to hear from you. Which of these items would impact your daily life the most? Drop it in the comments. And if you know a better storage trick than the ones I shared, post it. I genuinely read every comment. If you want more practical, no-panic tips like this, that subscribe button is calling your name. Hit it, tap the notification bell, and you won't miss our weekly updates on what's really happening with your food supply.